from the CyberHub bunker and studio. You're listening to the CISO Talk Podcast. No sales, no bullshit, just straight talk. Straight talk. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Veteran November. Joining me today, old pal of the show, one of my favorite people, Daniel Sergile. Daniel, welcome back, buddy.
Appreciate it, James, man. It's good to see you again and good to be on the show again.
It's good to have you back, especially for Veteran November, especially for this episode, because, Saturday was my birthday, and I'm airing kind of this week very special episodes with some people who've challenged me to think differently, which you happen to be one of them, Daniel.
Yeah, I remember this relationship started from I think a LinkedIn kind of tete-a-tete where we were going back and forth with each other.
Well, it started over my defense of Capital One.
Yes.
I wrote a blog where I was just like, hey, these guys did it right by the book. They got the notice of someone telling them like, hey, someone's like in your cloud, they've got your data.
Yeah.
Which they took seriously. A few days later, they declared an incident, brought in law enforcement, patched it, and within 9 days found the perpetrator and got him arrested. Now, he still became a cybersecurity advisor. The CISO did. Yeah. But I was like, this is like, it was a really good thing that they did. Like, it was perfect incident response.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the fact that we could have a conversation without screaming at each other, really helped to that. It was a fantastic experience for me, and I know for you because we had such a good time.
We did.
So it's we have to be cognizant of time because you're trying to keep this 30 minutes, and we can go out, so.
I don't want to go into so. Veteran November, this series for those tuning in for the first time, if you're watching this because you see Daniel and you want to be like, oh, hey Daniel, great podcast. I've decided to dedicate the entire month of November to our veterans and bring their stories of how they transitioned from military to private industry to private life, and talk a little bit about their transition. Essentially, create a library for active duty military guys or people who are retired and looking to break into Infosec, and give them a place where they can go and meet and talk to their brothers and sisters who are in the industry who can help them break into it. And so, Daniel, just for our audience to know a little bit about, we all see all the patches behind you. We love them. But tell us a little bit about your time in the service and what you did.
Sure. So I was in IT starting about the age of 15. I was building computers for a now defunct company in Atlanta called Grant Computer. By the time I went to Southern Polytech, and at that point, I didn't know what I was doing in my life. And my dad, who's an Air Force veteran, was like, "You need to join the Air Force." And I was like, "Well, no, I'm not going to follow in your footsteps because let me try something different." And so I ended up going to the U.S. Army, and this was 1994, and when I went in, I went as a 62 Bravo, which is now a field surgeon. They've redone all the MOSs. It's kind of weird. I'm not a field surgeon, never claimed to be, but it was a heavy construction equipment repair. I had some interesting adventures in my life that precluded me from getting what I wanted within the first year. So fast forward, went through a background check for my secret clearance and everything else. Got stationed in Baumholder, Germany. They call it the Rock. And I'll just tell this short story. I showed up to Baumholder in a t-shirt, pair of shorts, and flip-flops. And it went from being a beautiful sunny day to foggy, to snow, to rain, back to fog, back to snow, back to sun in the course of about 45 minutes. And at that point, I'm like, I'm not in Kansas anymore, especially for being a Georgia boy, right? So in Baumholder, Germany, I was with the 47th Forward Support Battalion. We deployed to several places: Macedonia, Bosnia, Kosovo. I was on the Bosnian deployment, was at Camp Bedrock for the better part of 9 months with the 2nd Brigade Combat Team. And while we were there, part of our equipment failed, and they were asking if they didn't have any techs or anything. I'm like, listen, I've been building networks and computers for years. The Army was dumb enough to make me a mechanic, but if you want me to fix this, I can fix it for you. So I actually helped out and rebuilt one of their NT servers and did a side-by-side install, and I got notice from the battalion commander. And so around 99, I got transferred to Fort Hood, Texas, to be part of the 4th Infantry Division. And I was with 204th at Fort Hood, and my outgoing colonel basically called my incoming colonel and said, if you have a ISSO, which was, the technical term is the Information System Security Officer, but in reality, it's anybody that truly knows about computers that wants to deal with the at that time DITSCAP and the computer systems and maintaining them. So I actually became attached to, at the time, Captain Smith as his personal valet, as well as the ISSO, because the ISSO for the company reported into the captain. And then they're like, well, this isn't enough work for you, so we're also going to make you the unit armor and weapons specialist. So spent time there. I got out in August of 2000. And one of my biggest fears, and I had heard it from so many different people that had left the military, was all these guys are leaving the military and they don't know how to deal with the civilian life, and they fail and they come back, and then they just kind of give up, and it becomes, they become career Yeah, exactly. Speaking of cycles, the main reason I actually left is there's this thing in the Army called the death loop, which is you end up going from Fort Hood over to Korea, back to Fort Hood, back to Korea, and that's how you spend the rest of your military time. And seeing Korea was a hardship tour, and I was a young married specialist at the time. I didn't want to have every other 3 years being a hardship tour without family. So I decided at that point in 96 to get out, but I was scared to death that I wasn't going to be successful. And so in between ranges and fixing computers and fixing guns and, in the arms room, doing the maintenance and stuff, because I had a background already from building computers and building networks in Atlanta when I was younger, I decided to study for my CISSP. That way, not my CISSP, at that point is the MCSE. Microsoft Certified Security Engineer. And so I went through and spent my free time just kind of boning up and doing a lot more hands-on, doing a lot of the book work and bettering myself. And I think that's one thing I tell people all the time when they're like, hey, my kid wants to go in the military. And I'm like, if you want me to talk to them, I will. But here's the one thing I wish somebody had told me is, one, never believe what the recruiter tells you, because they're looking to fill what they need to fill. Two, if you're going to get a job or an MOS in the military, make sure that it has a civilian equivalent, right? So a parachute packer in the civilian world probably doesn't have that much of an equivalent. And if there is, they're not going to be, it's not going to be an abundant job, right? So that's the advice that I typically give most people. But for those that are in the military that are looking to get into cybersecurity and whatnot, I'll tell you, I spent so much time at that point just hacking around. We didn't have cable modems with firewalls behind them, and I used to go in and look at people's pictures on the internet, actually on their computers. And then before I left, I would change the registry settings so a banner would show up saying, hey, your computer's been I've been in your computer. Here's how I did, and here's how you fix it. So that was pre my CISSP and actually being in security. So, but I guess my point is I spent a lot of time learning.
Well, I mean, that's the military, right? In the military, if you're not learning, you're probably not going to stay on for much longer. You're probably headed out the door.
Or you're staying in the same place for the rest of your career. Yeah.
Right. You're going to stay in the same rank, same place for the rest of your career, which, by the way, if you're like an E3 or an E4, it absolutely sucks because you do all the grunt work. And you hope at one point you can kick it down to the E1s and E2s, but That's a whole other aspect to it. You talked a little bit about being scared to death. That's very true for a lot of people, right? They're very terrified when they leave the service. They're kind of not sure where to go. And you talked about kind of that cycle of leaving, taking that 6-month vacation and being a civilian, and then you end up either re-enlisting and you don't find yourself in the civilian world. Some people, everything falls apart for them. Other people, get into alcohol, drug abuse. We obviously know that the statistic of 22 a day, which is, alarming for a lot of us. Yeah. Veteran suicide. Talk a little bit about what you did to overcome some of those fears. What was kind of that feeling at the beginning, and then what'd you do to really tackle it and be able to really get over it?
So, one of the reasons that those that are departing the military or leaving the military tend to be like fearful of, because it's an unknown, right? You've had a super structured 2, 4, 6, 12, however many years you were in regiment. You knew you woke up at this time, you were going to do this, and every single day you knew exactly what you're doing. I am now leaving, and I have to figure out what I'm going to do with my time, but also B, what I'm going to do as a profession, right? And maybe for some of those, it was that, hey, I picked the wrong MOS because there is no civilian equivalent of it. But I think the biggest fear is, the military mindset is, complete mission, whatever the cost, whatever, the factors, adapt, overcome, complete mission. And so, in my mind, and I know several people's mind, is like, what if I can't be successful in this mission of the transition, right? And it's that unknown that typically gets folks. And my advice is very simple. If you don't have a plan, you plan to fail, right? Even if it is a short-term 6-month plan of, I'm going to spend so many hours, looking for a job, or my first advice is try and find a job while you're in. It's just like in the civilian world. It's easier to find a job when you have a job. Once those stresses start kicking in because you don't have that safety net, or you don't have a place to land, that, the drinking, the late nights, the stress, all that stuff kicks in. And the second piece of advice is, it's very much like when you have a giant problem in front of you, the adage of how do you eat an elephant? It's one piece at a time. Take the big issues that you have and break it down to their base components, start overcoming those. And soon enough, you kind of hit the halfway mark, and then it's just downhill from there. But so many people see, the transition to civilian life as being this monumental thing, especially if they haven't done the pre-work, they haven't bettered themselves, or they haven't landed a job prior to going in, or filled the funnel with possible interviews and potential. And I can't imagine leaving the military now with COVID and the amount of unemployment in the job market and everything else. It's got to be a daunting task. So, my advice is, have a plan, even if it's the most rudimentary plan of, I plan on doing X, Y, and Z the first month. As you're going through that, build on that plan, because, and then if something is that you feel is so insurmountable that you can't get over it, eat the elephant one piece at a time. Make sure that, there are manageable pieces, those smaller or micro goals, you knock those out. It does two things. A, it helps to deal with the problem, but it also boosts your confidence because you're completing that mission, right? And don't be afraid to ask people for help. That's one of our biggest downfalls, just as human beings, but also in the military. We're too proud to ask for help sometimes. And sometimes the problem is bigger than you and I, and we need that third person, or that fourth or fifth or 100th person to help us out. And the military has a ton of resources for, veterans that are ETSing, or military members that are ETSing. If you're not taking advantage of those resources, even something as simple as writing a resume in a professional manner and taking the vernacular out that you have in the military and turning it into a civilian equivalent does wonders. I can't tell you enough how many people have sent me resumes, and you could just, without knowing their military background, you can read that resume, and it looks like they're applying for another job in the military rather than in the civilian world. And I've actually sat down with several veterans that have sent me their resumes, and I've given them feedback and had phone conversations. Actually, I invited one to come into my office pre-COVID, and we went through his resume and redlined the resume, and I explained the structure and what the civilian equivalents were and everything else. And at that time, I believe that maybe he didn't go to the same classes and that I went through, but that was quite some time ago. But yeah, everything was just military jargon and vernacular. So you do have to kind of transition those. There is job placement within the military. They have these fairs for. I remember, I think it was Verizon and a few of the telcos and stuff had come in, and I interviewed with some of them for positions that they had open, and that's when I realized, I'm like, well, military is completely different than civilian, and there's some things that I got to work on, and that's another part of it. Is if you have to be extremely cognizant of what your weaknesses are as far as your skill set, and identify where you can improve and improve upon them, because nobody else is going to do it for you. You have to take it upon yourself and rely on the veteran community. It's amazing, and I mean absolutely amazing, how many veterans are within IT, let alone cybersecurity. I mean, just within my circles, we got Ken Foster, who you either interviewed or are going to be interviewing here pretty soon.
Right.
He's a Navy veteran. My boss is a retired Navy veteran that ran the crypto program for the Navy for the longest time. Everything from Navy SEALs. I got a buddy of mine, Troy, who's, former SEAL Team 2. I've got PJs. I've got Marines, literally every branch of the service that are either in the space that you're in or have been in the space that you're in. And they've all helped each other at some point in time. So absolutely, get to know the veteran community. And we met on LinkedIn, but it's funny enough, if you go on LinkedIn and you look at within the IT space and kind of start looking for vets and stuff, I know how many times I've gotten a cold hit from somebody who is like, hey, I'm getting out, I need help. And I've actually dropped what I was doing to help out a fellow service member or vet. It's a tight knit community, and, we all have had different struggles, pre and post service, that I don't think there's a vet in the world that wouldn't bend over backwards to help out another service member or veteran.
Well, cut down your adjustment time, right? Because the adjustment times, if it took us 2 years, we want it to take you 2 months, right? Because it's just like, you don't want to waste 2 years struggling, digging through the mud that we dug through, because it's a lot more challenging to do that, I think, than there's a lot of wisdom out there and a lot of different people that are willing to help. And it's just a matter of tapping into it and just being proactive, right? No one's going to know you're leaving until you let us know you're leaving. And no one's going to let us know where you're going until you tell us what you want to do. When you look at the difficult part of the transition, but actually being in your first civilian job, did you do the DIC? Did you transition out into the DIC, or did you go directly into the private market?
I went directly in the private market. So my first job coming out of the military was for Cox Communication as a desktop support analyst. And that was easy for me because I'd done the pre-work with the MCSE. I sat down. I'll never forget the lady that interviewed me. Her name is Lisa Destoons, fantastic lady. Still keep up with her today. But she asked me, hey, this basic troubleshooting question, and I dove into the weeds. I'm like, oh, I would do this, I would do this, I would do this. And she's like, hold on. So let's say they said that, this cable, are you going to check I'm like, oh yeah, the first thing, check whether, So, and it was funny because I thought I was like uber smart because I had all this stuff, but even like the basics of that, I needed help on. But I got the interview there, past that, and then I was still doing stuff on the side in security, and especially a lot of research. And so I think it was Code Red or NIMDA, one of those, Code Red, I think it was. When that hit, I knew exactly how to deal with it because I'd been studying up and everything else. And I took the initiative to kind of, tell our VP of IT, hey, this is what you need to do as far as a plan. And they actually followed through with it. And they're like, you seem to know a lot about this. I'm like, well, this is what I do for fun, and it turned into a career. And it's just something that you're passionate about, especially within security, whether it's IT, whether you're passionate about whatever.
Governance, risk, compliance.
Any of those, yeah.
Any of those. I mean, one of the big questions I always get from veterans is, I was a combat guy, I was a mechanic, I was whatever.
I was a mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was a mechanic in the Israeli military. So, I mean, and then they want to well, how can I get into cyber? Because I really want to get into cyber. And I go, well, have you done any research on your own? Like, don't wait to go get the cert. Start invest. Like, there's a ton of free YouTube content out there. Just start watching, listening, experiment on your own house. Don't be afraid to
oh, absolutely.
Unplug your Xfinity modem and start messing around with it and building subsequent networks and masking IPs and if you're brave enough, go find a company that's going out of business, buy one of their servers, and start messing around with it. Like, having
worked for an internet provider, I'm going to go ahead and advise you not to mess with your DOCSIS settings on your cable modem because they do look for that. So just some advice.
So here's a little tip from someone on the inside. Don't do that. What do they do? Do they just cancel you right then and there?
They send you a nasty gram and then they reprovision your modem. And if you do it again, they just cut you off completely.
That's funny. That's what happened to freedom of communication? Does that even exist anymore?
You know what happens is you do what I did. I wasn't a Cox customer. I was another local Georgia customer. So yeah, when you hack your DOCSIS modem and you basically create an internet outage except for your house, it becomes real easy to track you down.
Oh yeah, that's definitely that. I'm lucky. They built an electrical substation behind my house.
Interference must be awesome.
Forget interference. In the substation, they put in a fiber optic line, and the first exit point to that fiber optic line into our subdivision is this house. Yeah, son, I've got amazing internet now. Amazing. I am like first person down line for their fiber optic. It's great.
Not gonna lie, I'm a bit jealous in the fact that I live north of Atlanta in quote unquote the sticks. I couldn't get fiber to my house even if I paid top dollar. Can't do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I run 3 machines down here, like nothing. Literally, I do hit my data limit. It's never unlimited data, right?
No,
it's never unlimited data, but they cap you. Meaning they don't cap you, but they cap you on how much they charge you.
Yeah.
So once you exceed it, it's $10, whatever. But
I'm fully aware. I have 2 kids under 10 that have iPhones, iPads, computers, and they love to stream on pretty much every device that's in this house. And I'm like, how do we go through 5 gigs a day? It happens almost monthly. So I feel your pain.
Oh yeah, definitely. I go through that just on the podcast in a week sometimes.
Well, this month is going to be a banner month for you.
It is, but I love it. I love every minute of it, of doing these episodes. We're nearly almost out of time, but I kind of want to ask you for a little bit of wisdom. You're a deputy CISO, in a very top-notch leading organization. You've gone through a lot. What are some of the tips you would give veterans as they get out, go into the private market? How would you, what would you share as kind of your 3 takeaways? Do these and your transition will be good.
So number 1 takeaway is never stop learning. Be hypercritical of yourself and where your limitations are and how you can overcome those. Be hypercritical of yourself of where your weaknesses are and bolster those and learn and never stop learning. That's first. The second one is do not be afraid to ask for help from other veterans, from friends, from family. That's part of networking, right? But you have a special network, which is the veteran network. So tap into that. Once again, I don't know a single vet that won't help out another vet, especially if they're in that market, or they may know others that are in the industry that you're trying to get into. I mean, I think I've got like 3,000 or 4,000 people on LinkedIn that are across the world and different industries. If I can't find something for you, I know somebody who can. And finally, it's one of those kind of chicken and egg things. You got to have experience to, you got to have experience to get into anything, right? I think setting reasonable expectations and being able to understand that, if you're not coming from cyber, if you're not coming into that world, the first job out of the gate isn't going to be, the six-figure engineering job unless you've had that experience before in the military. Set your expectations reasonably. You will get a good job in IT and within security, and it'll pay well. It might not be what you want, but at the same time, I don't know how many times, and I don't know if I know you've dealt with this, where if you embellish, AKA lie, on your resume, it's super, 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 super easy to find that. What's really difficult is coming back from that. Okay. So that kind of goes into my previous ones of make sure you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. Make sure that for anything that you need to bolster and make stronger as far as your skills are concerned, that you've done that prep work, and tap the network. So
tap the network, definitely. Almost out of time. I'm so happy that we're actually staying within our parameter. For those who don't know, we can get.
I was expecting at least 2 hours.
Right, the first time we went like an hour and 50 minutes. I think it was it felt like a Joe Rogan podcast, and we didn't even get tired. It was just like, okay, it's Friday afternoon, so we got to go home.
So that's what happens when you get two people that are highly ADD and extremely outgoing on a call together. It could last for hours.
Yes, it can. So, Daniel, what's one thing you miss about your time in the military?
It's that camaraderie, that esprit de corps adventures. I mean, it's funny because I get asked all the time, would you do it again? And I always say in a heartbeat, in an absolute heartbeat. It's the brothers and sisters that you form a bond with, that have your back, and, that you can rely on. It's the joking around. I hate to say it, but like one of the, just the hilarity and the dark humor that comes out of stressful situations. I still tell stories to this day, which are not appropriate for this podcast, but I still tell stories to this day of some of the craziness that we went through in the military, So yeah, it's definitely that camaraderie. It's the strength that you build through adverse situations is life-changing. So
yeah, I'll second that. Everyone has said that. That's why on November 30th at 6:00 Eastern time, we're doing a veteran-only, non-aired hangout with your favorite spicy beverage or caffeinated beverage, the beverage of your choice. I know some of us don't drink. I personally am a bourbon, Scotch whiskey kind of guy. I know Daniel is too. And so
no wonder you and Ken get along so well.
It's all I drink.
His bourbon collection would put me in the poorhouse.
His bourbon collection is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It is. It's magnificent. I mean, it puts any bourbon collection to shame.
I know.
Right. But we do enjoy that. So November 30th, 6 p.m. You can go to our website, CyberHub Podcast, social media, or just DM me to attend. I'll send you a private Zoom link. You're just going to go on there, unaired, just us hanging out, veterans only. We'll share war stories. We'll drink a little bit. We'll close out November and pray that December of 2020 will be the last month of this year, and really like the last of this year. Like,
oh, seriously, this dumpster fire, I wish it would just go out. I'm so looking forward to the new, not normal. I guess is the best way to put it.
I'm looking to going back to what we were in January of this year, where our biggest problem was the Citrix vulnerability and the fact that RSA was in February for whatever godforsaken reason that was. It seemed like every year they push RSA up by a month, and you're like, what are you guys doing? What's happening here? Stop it.
You know what I'm looking forward to? Not having to spend 30 minutes of my time deleting junk email from people and explaining to people on LinkedIn why sending attachments and links from known strangers to a CISO is a bad idea. That's what I'm looking forward to. The onslaught, as I call it.
The onslaught of messages.
Yeah.
You know, if anyone sends me an attachment in LinkedIn, I kind of always go back to it and I go, why are you doing this?
Yeah. I typically have the side dog face, like, really? So,
especially when it's a vendor. It
always is, yeah.
He's our one pager about how great we are, and I'm like, oh god.
Here, double click this PDF on LinkedIn.
You're like, no one's trained you. You're untrained. If Chris Roberts heard this conversation right now, he'd have a post this long on LinkedIn about it.
He has had posts that long on it. It's hilarious because he has, like, I typically have no filter, but you know, I do have to be selective when I say. He's just like, hey, let's go ahead and put it out there. I love that guy.
Me too. I truly love Chris. All right, Daniel, thank you so much. Folks, that's it for another Veteran November. November 30th, 6 p.m., Veterans Only Hangout. This week, Thanksgiving week, I'm being thankful for other people. My birthday was on Saturday, and up until Thanksgiving, I'm airing episodes of people I'm thankful that have helped me become a better cybersecurity guy. And also veterans. They happen to all be veterans. They just happen to all be that. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the fact that what Daniel just said, that we help each other and support each other, is absolutely 100% true. That's it for us here, folks. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for listening, tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. Until next time, folks, James Azar here, signing off, wishing you all lots of great health. Happy Thanksgiving. God bless this country.
Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. And get all the latest information at cyberhubpodcast.com.